And what I need to do, I need to turn this computer off because we're getting feedback right now. 1 second. Close the top. Even better. Yay. Old-fashioned way. Turn it off. Okay. My name is John Joseph Maskey Brea, and I'm the minister here at Manor United Church. And I started here in May, and it's been an honor to certainly get to know Jan over the years. So a few of us are going to be speaking a bit later, some on Zoom and some in person. And I've been told that we have our wonderful UCW has created takeaway cookies. Now, if we were in Quebec, we could have had takeaway wine and beer, but we're in Ontario, so we can't do that. Bear with me. One of my favorite moments is beginning with a word that's the Spirit of God, unseen as the wind, gentle as is the dove. Teach us the truth and help us believe. Show us the Savior's love. You spoke to us long, long ago, gave us the written word. We read it still, reading its truth. Through it, God's voice is heard. And we speak to the words of Walt Whitman, afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road. Healthy, free, and the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose. Let us pray. My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear through far-off hymn the wonder of new creation. No storm can shake our inmost calm. Oh, we is that rock and clean. Since love is Lord, heaven and earth, how can we keep from singing? Amen. Let me just 1 second. Now we do have a few people who are on deck to speak, and we'll begin with Elizabeth Cullen. Now, just to clarify, is Elizabeth present or is she on the Zoom platform?
She's on the Zoom platform.
1 second. So Elizabeth, what I'm going to do, I'm going to shift from this device to the other, and when I give you the thumbs up, you'll be ready to go. Now, Elizabeth, can you hear me? No. 1 second. Oh, you can. Elizabeth, can you hear me? You need to unmute yourself. Where is Elizabeth? There we are. Elizabeth, is your video turned on? No, I don't see Elizabeth. 1 second. Has she signed in? Oh, there's Liz. Is Liz Cullen, right? Okay. Liz, can you hear me? You're speaking. Okay. There we are. Try speaking again, Liz. Are you muted, Liz? because we can see you moving your lips. No, we're not. Okay, we're not. You don't seem to be muted. Did you choose your microphone on the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen? Can you see that? You're muted. Okay, unmute.
Mute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Roger that. 1 second. Okay, good.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
No,
I just wanted to say a little poem about Auntie Jan. Are we okay?
I'm just going to spotlight you so everyone can see you. Okay. No pressure, Liz. That's it. There you go. Now we're seeing you, Liz. Okay, you're ready to go.
Okay, I just wanted to say a few words about what Auntie Jan meant to us. So I wrote a little poem. The distance between us didn't keep us apart. We all knew this deep in our heart. Your visits every summer back to your homeland would make us smile as you walked through the airport, coffee in hand. We would visit Disbury Village and your old haunts, and Mum would tell us all about your childhood taunts. Strong, independent, and intelligent describe you best. Now the battle is over, it is time to rest. Thank you for being our auntie from your loving nephews and nieces. We will remember you fondly and miss you dearly because we loved you to pieces. Lots of love, Liz, Stephen, Wayne, Becky and Kim. Thank you.
And Liz, where are you zooming in from?
From Manchester.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. Beautiful. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
And just mute yourself now. Now our next speaker is Rebecca. Is Rebecca present or is she on Zoom?
She is on Zoom.
1 second. We're just going to shift gears. Now, does Rebecca go by Rebecca or Becky?
Becky.
Good. Because sometimes I okay, good. Let's find her. Okay. So Becky, if you can just make sure your video is on. Well, there you are. Good. Yeah, when you wave at me, it sort of helps me see this. Okay, there we go. Good, perfect. Okay. Now, Becky, can we just make sure, just say hello?
Hello?
Perfect. Okay, you probably want to turn your volume up a bit.
I'll come a bit closer. Is that okay?
That's wonderful. Over to you, Becky. Okay.
I'm reading this on behalf of my mum, Pat, Jan's sister. She hopes that it will be a little comfort to you, Megan and Matthew, and everyone else who loved Jan. I am standing on the seashore. A ship appears, spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the ocean. She is an object of beauty, and I stand watching her till at last she fades away on the horizon. Somebody at my side quietly says, "She is gone." Gone where? Gone from my vision, that is all. She is just as large as when I saw her last. The diminished size and loss of sight is in me, not her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says she is gone, there are others who are watching her coming, and voices take up the joyful shout, "Here she comes." Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And God the Father says, "Do not be afraid, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire, the flames will not consume you. For you are precious to me. I love you." Isaiah 43, this is 1-4. Jan was a very much loved sister, and even when we were very young, I was always so proud of her. Over the years, I have continued to be proud of her as I watched her pursue her teaching career, marry Harry, move to Canada, have Matthew and Megan, and year after year faithfully raising funds for Alzheimer's charities, even though she was battling this dreadful disease herself. Jan, you will always be my precious big sister. See you in the morning.
Thank you, Becky. Now, where are you zooming in from?
Llangollen in North Wales.
Wonderful, wonderful. That was beautiful. Now we have our next person, Ernie. Right. So Ernie, we're just going to ask you to wave at me. And Ernie, can you just put your hand up and wave at me?
You wave it.
Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect.
Oh, here.
Okay, we're just gonna wonder. Okay, good. There you go. Perfect. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Terry and I, my wife Terry and I met Jan and Harry in the late 70s. And for the next quarter of a century, they became very close friends of ours. Soon after we met, we found that we had been married on exactly the same day. They in England and we here in Canada. We celebrated many of our anniversaries together. We shared our children back and forth. We shared vacations, Cape Cod, Lake Placid, Eastern Ontario to our home down on Lower Beverly Lake. We had so many good times together. Jan was a great puzzle solver. She taught me how to do Sudoku, and I never got past the early levels of those. And she did the hardest ones, and I was so impressed by that. She loved French. She loved teaching. She loved a good argument. I think we all know that. She was a lot of fun. She raised two great kids who've lost a wonderful mom. And there are several beautiful grandchildren that have lost a loving grandmother. She is missed. Jan, we'll always miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. Now we're just going to transition into the room. And we have our next set of speakers going to be Patty, Betty, Glenna, and then Matthew. Did I leave anybody out? Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, one second. Let me just switch microphones. Ruth at the very end. Ruth, okay. Just make sure I have this on. That's on too. So what's happening, Pat, is that sound is going through the house and coming into that. There we go. Perfect. Okay.
Gentle, light, traditional, kind. These are the words that come to mind when thinking about Jan. My mind's earliest images, Jan indulging in reading and chocolate, on the phone with friends and family, padding around to find the latest card and some photos for us to see, pointing to each person, ensuring she named everyone, ready to engage. And she never failed to impress with how she could make conversation about nothing with anyone. She always had something kind to say about the service she received from anyone. The waiters at the restaurant were always discussed. The last few years consumed her, but her true colors of kindness still shone through as she traveled to see the neighborhood children to give them a treat. And you could tell that the highlight of her week was to sit down with her grandchildren and be there to joke and be impressed by them and read and feed pigeons and notice all the little things around her. And we are grateful that we were in her loving company. And when I imagine looking through her eyes, I see how big the little moments in our world are. And it is hard to make these speeches because you can't sum up such a big life in a few words. And it ends up sounding like a greeting card. But then again, Jan loved cards, so maybe it's kind of appropriate. We love you, Jan. We love you so much.
Thank you, Betty. That was quite beautiful. And then we call on Betty.
Good afternoon to everyone here and from around the world that are here to celebrate Jan's life today. I was able to meet Ren and Quinn for the first time today, and I've been getting revelations, so I just felt I would like to say a few words too. And Quinn, I thank you. We were sharing some things back there, and I said, is this your first time to go to a service like this? And you said yes. And I said, you know what this is? It's a celebration of your Nana's life. It's time to honor her, respect her, and realize we will never forget her because we're sharing beautiful memories. And Quinn said back, no, you just have to look at the pictures here. My Nana had a terrific life. Look at all she did, all she achieved. And when the song came on like a rainbow, she said, that's my Nana. She's a rainbow. And I thought, yes, full of color, full of life, and full of joy. We at Manor Road will miss Jan terribly. She has been a large part of the life here of the church. She was here when I became an attendee at the church. Now at the back, we have the UCW treats to go, and you'll notice goldfish crackers, right? Okay. Well, at church on Sunday, we had goldfish to take home, and John Joseph clearly pointed out they weren't the fish, it was the crackers we were putting out there. Now they're very special because when Jan was at church, she always would come out with packages of goldfish crackers for the children and be going about through the congregation, making sure that every child would have a treat. The adults were maybe a little jealous, but you know, I think she let us occasionally have a treat from that stuff as well. You may not know it, but Jan was a prayer warrior. Susan Russell was here. She was a prayer warrior with Jan, and they would take prayers from the congregation for people in need. And I will never forget that Jan's memory would hold on to the people she was praying for. In particular, I had a friend up north whose grandson had a diagnosis of brain tumor, was treated and then had a stroke. And we were praying desperately for little Wesley. And sometimes Jan would embarrass me because she'd come up after congregation and say, hey, how's Wesley doing? I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't check in this week. But Jan never forgot to keep Wesley in her prayers. Wesley's now 10 years old. He learned to speak, he learned to walk, he got through all the complications he had. And I think part of that is the strength of the prayer warriors here. And Jan was certainly a leader in those prayer warriors. So thank you, Jan, for all the prayers you did for us and kept us in your heart. I suspect you're going to keep an eye on us. We're not there. Jan was also an usher, and somehow I got appointed the team captain. I'm not sure why, because I hate doing math, but with Jan on my team, we could achieve anything, so she kept me in mind. But there came a point when Jan couldn't do that part anymore. And so on the team, we asked Jan to be the greeter at the door. And she rose to the occasion and was a smiling face that people saw coming into Manor Road and greeting them. I also think of our multiple rummage sales and fall fairs, and Jan was the librarian. She would have a corner with all the books, and she would be helping people choose a book that would be appropriate to take home as a memory from the church. Now, Manuel's at the back. He looks after us here, and I'm going to let you know that he and Jan had a special relationship. They both like to take the fresh air quite a bit together. Do you know what I mean by fresh air? So they shared that. And Manuel said he's going to put a package of cigarettes on the refreshment table and all. Now, there's another thing we did. Mike, you're here. Mike led the Alzheimer Manor Road United Church team for fundraising year after year. I think I joined it the last year you had it, and I was privileged to walk with you and Jan on that walk of Alzheimer's, which was so meaningful. And Jan really set up a good clip to keep fundraising for something that was near and dear to her. Another memory, which is maybe a little sad, is that as I look here, I remember the Sunday that Jan came to church, and she had a fall outside the church. And she came in, and we weren't sure what to do. We were worried for her, and we called an ambulance, and she went to Sunnybrook Hospital. And that's where things changed for her. And I got to meet Matthew more closely. We had some nice visits in the hospital, and I think I met Glenna at the hospital too. And so we do have that memory of Jan here, part of our church. She wasn't able to come back, but then Matthew, we did those wonderful Zooms with your mom. And on a couple of occasions, she was able to join the church service, and we had a little bit of time to say hello. And even after that, with your weekly Zooms, we had some congregation members and the minister joined and be able to say hi to Jan. And it made it very, very special for us. So those are just a few memories I hope to share, and to remember that we never forget. We always carry people in our heart. They are with us always. And I have a funny feeling that although Jan may be resting a bit now and well deserved, I think I heard a song on your pick list, which was Can't Stop Us Now.
Don't stop me now.
Can't stop me now. Well, I'm going to say your mom's with your dad, Harry, and there's no stopping them now. They're together, they're doing what they love to do, and they're keeping an eye on family, friends, neighbors, and the people she loved and cared about. Thank you so much, Jen, for being a part of our life here at Manor.
Thank you, Betty. I'm going to highlight that. I just realized that.
No, I just gonna say, Ren would like to say.
Okay, Randy, you want to come up? Now we'll be able to see you too.
Okay. I just wanted to say like a few, I just wanted to say like a few thank yous to Nana because I remember when I was little, she would come over and we would go to the park together every time. We'd like go across the street and she would hold my hand and we'd wave at the cars like, oh, thanks for stopping. And then we'd get to the park and we'd get to the swings and she would push me on the swings. And every push, she would say a number in French up to 10. And then I slowly, of course, I don't know if I really learned my numbers, but that was definitely a start to learning French. She would push and say, and then I would repeat it, and then she'd say, and go do that. I remember going to the park with her, and it was just so nice, you know, like to spend such good time. So I want to say thank you, Nana, for being a really good grandmother and teaching me so much.
Thank you, Ren. Now we call Lana.
Good afternoon, everyone. My sincere condolences to everyone, especially Matthew and Megan and all of their families. I'm Glenn Hilborn, friend of Jan and the Roberts family. In 1982, my husband and I and 2 children moved from Shaughnessy Heights in Vancouver to the east end of Toronto. It was quite a culture shock. I didn't know anybody. I was home with 2 small children, and my husband was quite busy. Jan lived right across the street from me and offered me her hospitality and her friendship, which endured these many years. Each day I would wait for her to come home from my window and laugh because she called me her stalker. And we enjoyed coffee and a chat before dinner. As you know, Jan loved books. We would discuss our current reads as well as the movies we enjoy together. We discuss love, relationship, children, husbands, marriage, religion, politics, all the great things, solve all the world problems, and have many hearty laughs in the process. Jan was very intelligent and articulate in both English and French. She taught French at Bayview Glen Private School and was even acting headmistress one year, covering a sabbatical. She managed all her household finances, invested, and was intent on saving for her adored children and later her grandchildren, and had not even the smallest criticism of them ever. Loved them unconditionally. When Harry died, she bore her grief and loneliness stoically. She continued to work, joined a fitness program, and became involved in many activities here at Manor Road, where she felt at home and took solace in the fellowship and friendship of many good people. So I hope each of us will remember Jan for the robust, friendly, witty, intelligent, and generous woman she was, and not by the devastating and humiliating illness which robbed her of so much and now finally robbed us of our good friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Can you just clarify, you said someone else named Ruth also?
Ruth is doing the final afternoon. She's doing the
Oh,
final.
her, okay.
Yeah.
So before you, is there anybody else?
I know. That's
Okay, then over to you, Matt. Okay. I want to raise the microphone.
Hello, everyone. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out. These are truly strange times that we're living in. Never thought that I, would be sending out a Zoom link for my mom's funeral. But, as so many things in life, it's a bit of a mixed blessing. We're able to now share this with people across the sea in England, in Wales, on the West Coast. So who we don't have here, I think Megan is joining us on the Zoom, and that we are, I think we have about over 30 people on the Zoom. So as much as it seems small here, it's huge, it's huge across the world, which is great, which is what my mom deserved. Hard to follow those other speeches. I decided to go last because I thought that I could just come up and say, well, I guess that's everything. So good night. But of course, there's a lot more to my mom. We could be here all day talking about what a wonderful, loving, intelligent, witty, charming woman she was. There just isn't enough time because, it's a celebration of life, and wow, what a life, hey? It's unfortunate sometimes when it does take something like this for it to really hit home, you tell everybody afterwards, and it's such a cliche, you say, go take stock now, and they don't, and that's fine, that's what humans do, they're always looking ahead, and we should be. But it is good to have these moments because it does bring it home how much, you love someone and how much they loved you and how much they were loved. as I said, a lot of what I have in my notes was covered by others, but there's still a lot more to go. For many of you might not realize that my mom, although from Manchester, always sounded very mid-Atlantic. It's funny, one of her good friends, Ruth, you might not be able to place her accent either. And that's, you wouldn't say, oh, she's from Manchester. And it doesn't mean they ever forgot their roots. It just means that they moved and grown, and in Ruth's case, she came to Canada at times that she might have even picked up a little bit of a Canadian twang once in a while. But they both came from, basically working class, areas of Manchester, especially my mom. She grew up in a house called a 2 up, 2 down, which was really kitchen, dining, living room, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. And you're kind of like, well, so in the bathroom, it's like, well, part of the bathroom might have been outside of the house, So to come from a 2 up, 2 down to a 4-bedroom detached house for her and for my dad was huge. I remember when they first moved to Toronto, they couldn't believe it. My dad on the same kind of upbringing where he, couldn't conceive of having his own garage and driveway and garden. And they borrowed money, they got a mortgage to buy the house, and then had to get another loan to pay property tax, because what's property tax? That was in East York at Bentonia Park, where they met many of the friends that they still have today. That's where they met Glenna, who lived across the street, and the Shahabs, and where they started a cooperative nursery school called the Bentonia Park Nursery School in the basement of, guess where? A United Church. Because that's, where the United Church always, came into play with my mom. She was very religious and very spiritual, but not afraid to question why and who and where. And, she had books from, does God exist, to, of course God exists, and everything in between, which is what I think people loved about her. But she certainly loved the church, and she loved coming here, and she was involved in, the choir and bell ringing and so many different things. But also she would come here on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of summer to sit in this room and then just enjoy the solace and the sanctuary that it provides. You can't really tell Zoom people out there, but it's a big carved arched wooden ceiling here that, as I look around, makes me think that we are kind of in a ship. It very much feels like we're in a ship right now, as to Auntie Pat's reading. And I can see that, the comfort that must have brought her. When my mom did return to England, which was fairly often, she would always visit, of course, her side of the family, my Auntie Pat and all my cousins and distant relatives in Wales. But she always made sure, even after my father passed, to visit his side. And she would come back from England, and not with tales of, the West End show that she'd seen, or went to this fabulous restaurant. It was all, we had to stop in and see, Uncle Barry, or Great Uncle Ted. It was all for her. It was all about connections, as I'm sure you're all aware. It was always keeping those ties, and having new adventures didn't mean being flashy. It just meant, sitting up till 3 o'clock in the morning, discussing a book that she had read, or a new movie that she'd seen. As to Betty, it's funny. It made me remember that she was part of the prayer warriors and had a pretty extensive prayer list that she, that she carried around with her. It reminded me when one time when she went to visit Megan, and Megan would actually have to take the list from her hand at night after she'd fallen asleep, because it was so long, sometimes she wouldn't make it all the way through. One time I was looking at the list, I noticed my friend Brad's name was on the list, and I told him, "Oh yeah, Brad, my mom's praying for you." And he's like, "What? Why? What's happening?" I'm like, "No, I'm sure you had a cold or the flu last year, but you're still on the list and you're still in her prayers," which is nice. It's nice to think that that we hear in someone's prayers. I guess the other thing that I was going to touch on is, of course, the love of my mom's life, who, an English chap that she discovered in the late 90s called Freddie. That'd be Mr. Freddie Mercury of the band Queen. Obviously, my dad is the true love of her life, but she really did have a little thing for Freddie, that's for sure, to the point where, again, going through the pictures reminded me of her stalking him at his house. Right outside the door, climbed on top of a wall to take a picture over the hedge in the backyard. You can see the security cameras. Numerous times going to the Queen fan club. When Brian May, the guitarist from Queen, came to town, she talked her way onto his tour bus as a journalist. And he basically looked at her and he said, really, so we're looking at basically a 60-year-old journalist. And got him to sign a picture album. So that's my mom right there in a nutshell. She really lived life and she grabbed it by the reins and she didn't let go. I mean, she fought her condition to the very end. I mean, people would say to me, oh, have you ever thought of maybe putting her in a home? And I'm like, well, that's the trouble. You can't put someone somewhere. They have to want to go. And to the very end, we would discuss it and she would just pound her fist on the table and say, nope. And we're like, well, okay, 6 weeks later, I would come back to it and she would say, nope. And so until she had her fall, I was Ubering her to church and to my house every Monday for dinner and to buy her groceries. And she said, why would I leave here? I have amazing neighbors like the Klumacs and Dan and Barb. And, she knew all the kids on the street and she knew, and the cats all knew her because the cats, I was over at her house the other day, and the cats still come up to the back door in hopes there might be some treats. So yeah, it just she really did just keep fighting and just to the very end, which was my mom. I guess the last thing I'll bring up is her frugality. My mom was very frugal. I remember we would go out for dinner and I could see her scanning the menu, trying to figure out what's the best ROI here? What's the best return on investment do I have on this menu? And meanwhile, my dad would be like, oh, I think I'll have lamb, or I fancy a steak, or whatever took his fancy, I'll have that. And you can see my mom just looking at him like, really? Lamb? And she would always, chastise us if she knew that she could get a better deal somewhere else for anything, be it coffee or pants or Section 9, true story, in her will states that she wants to be cremated the cheapest way possible. And again, if it's something that you haven't talked about as a family, I can't, say that I'm disappointed that is in the will. Made it a lot easier because I was going to go with the 24-karat gold coffin, but mom's wishes are mom's wishes. But her frugality also led to us living in a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood, being able to travel, go to England, see our relatives, feel like there's more to life than sitting on your butt. It made us appreciate things. The true worth of things. Why throw something out when you can get it repaired? I mean, that was also a lot from my dad too, but that's another speech. So, Mom, obviously we're gonna miss you. We love you very much. And I'm just happy that you're free, you're with Dad. It's a mix of grief, but also some relief that you're off on new frugal adventures. Thank you, everyone, for coming so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And now we have Cullen Ruth. Is Ruth on the Zoom?
Yes, here I am.
1 second. And there we go.
Okay,
Over to you, Ruth. We can hear you now. Great.
great. Yeah. I'm Ruth and I'm in High Wycombe in England, near London. And I've known Jan since I was 12. And thank you to everybody who's here. How wonderful to share this together. And thank you for making that possible. And like everybody here, my life is so much richer for having known Jan. And we prayed this prayer together many, many times in long telephone calls or when we were together. And I pray it for Jan because she's home now. And also for Matthew and Megan and their families, for the grandchildren, and for all those of us who love her, because love doesn't ever end. It never ends. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. Amen.
Thank you, Ruth. That was very beautiful. I'm just going to shift gears. Second. Got someone coming in. One second. Oh, good. As you can tell, we journeyed into an adventure in the last 24 months, being on what we call the Zoom and the micro team and the Google Hangouts and all those things. I would say, in many ways, it's helped us continue to be connected to each other, perhaps better than we could probably ever have imagined. But perhaps the greatest gift we can continue to be with each other is speak in person. Texting and all those other platforms are lovely, but they speak of, again, one way. But as we celebrate, every story of Jan is about her speaking and us listening. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts. When we think of the words of Psalm 121 that speak of, I lift my eyes to the hills, the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be slipped, and he watches over you, will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm, and will watch over your life. And the Lord watch over you coming and going, both now and forevermore. Now, one other particular part of the gospel that spoke and speaks to me also about Jan and the life of Manor Road, how I met her. The question when Jesus asked, who is my neighbor? I believe everyone here and everyone online. And Jesus said, a person was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when they were attacked by robbers, and they stripped them of their clothes and beat them and went away, leaving them half dead. And a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when they saw the person pass by the other side. And so to a Levite, when they came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as they traveled, came where the person was, and when they saw him, took pity on him and went to him and bandaged their wounds and put him in oil and wine and put the person on their own donkey and brought them to an inn and took care of them. To me, that speaks to who Jen has and continues to be for many of us. And we remember this lovely person, Jen Roberts, filled with wanderlust, and we think of mountains, and we think of the Psalms, and we think of the place, especially when we think of those fish crackers that we heard so much about. That's sort of the prelude to mealtime. Now, we can't actually have a meal together, but I'm sure many who have known Jan remember the meal times of breaking bread. And that's something I think that requires a bit of a reboot as well in our society, doesn't it? We're also much about takeout and takeaway, but we need to take the takeaway back home and eat together. And perhaps that's the greatest gift we can be for each other. Because when we think about the faith that we share, it was from beginning to end of the text, it's about meal times. In the place of famine, it's about meal times. In the place about abundance. And today we recall, again, when Matthew and I were chatting, I recalled the wonderful piece called the Dylan Thomas Child Christmas in Wales. Now, we're not going to read all of that because it would take another half an hour, but just a wee bit of an excerpt, because it is Christmas time. One Christmas was so much like another. In those years around the sea town corner, and out of all the sound except the distant speaking of voices, I sometimes hear a moment before sleep that I could never remember, whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. And all this is a gift, is it not, when we speak of today and who we are? But when we think of the gift of gathering, as we ponder that wonderful piece that comes from the Sound of Rent, the song that speaks of the seasons of love, 525,600 minutes. That's a year. And we think of all the years and the moments that Jan has spoken to and continues to speak to us even now. And that is the seasons of love, that we refer to as the Lady from Manchester. When we think of England in Canada, one thing we do celebrate perhaps is when people who are American hear us talk in Canada, they say, "You're Canadian." And you know how they know that? Because we say out and about and route. We say expressions, holiday, and we hear that comes from the British tradition, certainly. When Americans speak of holiday, they think of Thanksgiving, Christmas, but it's about taking time away, is it not? And we also have the tradition of Victoria Day. I remember running into someone in Paris, and they were chatting about the 3-day weekends that we have. And I said, "Oh yes, we have a 3-day weekend in May. We call that Victoria Day." And they said, "Oh, that's Empire Day, you know?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Well, we're not sure. We don't actually celebrate the birthday of Queen Victoria. We're just glad we have a 3-day weekend, don't we? Isn't that a great gift? But we think of the traditions that we share, the roots that we have. I lost my own father, Nick, a few years ago. My mother, shortly a few years after that. But all those people in our lives, they touch us even now. And Benjamin Franklin once wrote, "Dost thou love life? Do not squander time." For that's the gift of being here and now in this moment. As we hear in the passage today about a Samaritan, we celebrate that each of us becomes Samaritan for each other. And as we hear in the Walt Whitman poem, "Mon enfant, I give you my hand, I give you my love more precious than money. Will you give me yourself before preaching or law? Will you come and travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live?" Let us pray. God, we turn to you again and turn to each other. And in the center of life that is filled with heart and fire, may we be the beacon now of care and compassion and love. In this circle of life and gift, may we join now together in the prayer that Christ taught us and say, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And just as we became always on Christmas, an uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Sherry Ripe, another uncle sang Droke Strum. It was very warm in that little house. And Auntie Hannah, who got into the parsnip wine and sang about bleeding hearts and death, and another which said her heart was like a bird's nest. Then everybody laughed again and again. Then I went to bed, looking through my bedroom window, and out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow. I could see the lights in the windows of all other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them up the long, steady falling night. I turned the gas down, I got into bed, and I said some words to close in holy darkness, and then I slept. And now we say, blessings be upon us all as we carry that light of Jan Roberts in our heart as mother, as grandmother, as aunt, as friend. May we continue to linger and talk in peace and hope. Amen. I'm just going to stop the recording.